Ludmilla never thought this day would come. Her beloved husband, with whom she had lived so many happy years, said he was leaving. A small hope still lurked in her soul. "Are you being called back to work?" Luda asked excitedly. Gennady got up and blurted out, "No, I'm leaving you. I'm leaving for good, for another woman." Lyumila's eyes blurred. In what he said the closest person did not want to believe. But her husband's behavior spoke for itself. He mechanically ran through the apartment and chaotically dumped his belongings into an open suitcase. It was obvious that this conversation was terribly unpleasant to him, and he was certainly not going to sort things out. So quickly leaving his belongings, he slammed the suitcase and ran out the door. Stopping on the landing, Gennady sighed deeply. From the apartment, which he had so long considered his home, smelled deliciously homemade pastries. Luda, one had to hand it to her, was a wonderful hostess. Order, delicious food, childcare. Ludmilla did it all at the highest level. But the heart, as they say, you cannot command. He met someone else. Maybe his new love and does not cook, but she is young, beautiful and incredibly gentle with him. And what else does a man need to be happy? Gennady picked up his suitcase and resolutely headed out of the entrance. And Lyudmila, frozen in the corridor, could not believe what had happened. Subconsciously she knew that the discord in their family life has long been outlined. Constant delays, husband, frequent emergency meetings, new clothes and a change of image, all this, of course, suggestive. However, Luda shoved these thoughts away from her. He could not be the one for whom she was ready to do anything, for whose sake she had given up her studies and career, betray her like this. She had devoted her whole life to her family, and what had happened? Her children had grown up, she had no job, and, as it seemed, she had no future either. So how does she go on? And everything started out so well. Luda's academic record was always excellent, which enabled her to easily enter an aviation institute. Most of the students were boys, but there were also a few girls. In her class Lyuda met Alyona and Vera. Girls quickly found a common language and became close friends. They had many admirers, but it was Lyudmila who first met her love. One day a young man came up to her when she was leaving a cafe and asked to meet him. Luda modestly smiled and asked why it was with her. "Because you are very beautiful," the guy confidently replied. She blushed and agreed. The guy's name was Gennady, and his last name was quite funny, Goose. The young people began dating and a year later got married. On the day of their wedding Luda felt the happiest in the world and would never have thought that this fairy tale would have such a sad ending. At that moment the phone rang. It was one of her best friends, Vera. She and her husband were nearby and offered to meet. "Gina has gone," said Luda quietly. The tube was sharply silent. And then Vera said, "Now I will call Alina and in half an hour we are at your place." After a while our friends gathered in the kitchen. "How to tell the boys do not know," sighed Luda. "At least Anton is in the army, otherwise there would have been such a scandal. And Ima has only a first year. How am I going to pay for his education?" Vera sighed heavily. She never would have thought that such a reliable man as Gennady would not only leave her for another woman, but also refuse to help their children. Alyona, on the other hand, had a completely different opinion. "So stop crying," firmly she said. "Well, he left, and good riddance. Your life is not over. But you have to make a conclusion. That you're a great hostess, it's certainly good, but it's all getting boring, becomes commonplace. When was the last time you went to the salon or bought yourself a new dress? And men like eyes." Luda doomfully looked at her friend, not able to contradict her. "And what can I say, there was some truth in it. Listen, do you remember Vitya Skvortsov? He was a year older than us." Luda thought about it. He was like that. Tall, handsome, but they never really communicated. "Tomorrow we'll go with him," confidently said Alyona. "Why?" Luda wondered. "Tomorrow you'll find out." The next day Alyona and Victor came to visit Lyudmila. It turned out that the man owned a chain of bakeries in the city, and he needed an assistant. Victor said that he had heard about Ludmila's outstanding cooking skills and believed that she could fit in well. Ludmila hesitated and asked for a few days to think about it. Victor gave her his number and asked her not to delay her decision. That same evening a conversation took place with the youngest son, Dima. Ludmila decided not to hide from her son that his father had left him for another woman. Dima hugged his mother and said that they would go through all these difficulties together. He decided to transfer to correspondence school and get a job in order to somehow help his mother. A couple of days later Lyudmila met with Victor and said she was ready to work with him. He explained to her that his company planned to open several bakeries after the new year. Luda decided to disagree with him. You have to open now. It is during the holidays that people most often buy pastries, so opening before the new year will attract a large number of customers to us." Victor smiled. He realized that he had made the right choice by inviting Luda to work. With her arrival to the company, things were very active. She introduced several of her pie recipes into the bakery menu, which quickly became a success. She monitored everything from kneading dough to window dressing. Through constant interaction with her employees, she realized who was really making a difference and who was just bumming around. She even had to fire several confectioners who deliberately violated the baking technology. The first time Victor brought Luda's paycheck home, he spoke very highly of her work, and so he gave her in an envelope not only her salary, but also her bonus. Luda was so embarrassed by the praise that she did not even look at the money. When Victor left, she looked into the envelope and saw a huge sum of money that she could never have expected. She decided that Victor had made a mistake, so she dialed the number and told him so. But the companion assured her that everything was correct, there was no mistake. The woman was so engrossed in her work, she disappeared there until late at night. She didn't even come in for lunch. The son cooked his own meals while the institute was on vacation. "My mother could never tell me that my parents had split up," the father told her over the phone. And Dmitry confessed that she was the best he had, and they would get by without his father. Dimka transferred to correspondence courses, got a job so he could help his mother and not depend on such a father in any way. Ludmila did her job very conscientiously. She supervised all the processes of baking, not allowing the slightest deviation from the technology. She even fired a couple of cooks who were unprofessional about it. Everyone who worked with her already understood that everything had to be done clearly and quickly. Even the cleaners began to clean so that everything around them sparkled. In the first months, thanks to her hard work, Luda managed to earn good money. And now the future did not seem so hopeless to her. It is quite possible to pay for his son's schooling and upgrade his closet. Gennady, who called occasionally, never once asked what his ex-wife and son lived on, how they paid for their education. His new love was costing him a great deal. Sonia knew no measure and demanded more and more. Gennady remembered his wife more and more often. She knew how to save money and run the house properly. Winter passed and the first spring month of March came. Victor invited his companion to the office for advice. The woman was a little worried, this had never happened before. But calmed herself with the fact that her work is all clear and the bosses exist for that purpose, at any time to call the employee into the office. But when she went outside, she immediately noticed Victor's car. The driver got out, opened the door and invited her to sit down in the car. This calmed Luda, because when they want to scold, they do not send a car with a driver. When Lyudmila entered the office, Victor immediately got to the heart of the conversation. A commercial center is opening in the center of the city, which will have many different offices. And the fourth floor will be a cafe for employee catering, banquets and corporate events. All the equipment has already been bought and there is staffing. All that is missing is a good manager. He assured Luda that she would do fine, he was sure of it. The woman was worried about what would happen to their baked goods outlets. "You'll supervise a couple of times a week. I'll give you a car with a driver so you can keep up everywhere. We'll find a replacement for you there later," Victor said. Ludmila was slightly confused by the unexpected proposal and asked for time to think. Now she had 3 days. There was a lot of work in the cafe and there was no time for long thinking. 3 days later, Ludmila said yes to Victor, who came to her house. It was a very interesting proposal, but Lyudmila still had doubts whether it would work out for her. The opening was perfect. The mayor himself was present at the presentation. A buffet was organized in a cafe, and Luda's specialty pies were served. Praise was heard from all sides. Now Lyudmila had a personal driver who could take her anywhere in the city at any time. There were many orders. Ludmila was tired and her body was aching, and her head was buzzing. Victor noticed her tiredness and said that she certainly needed to rest, needed a weekend off. Their gazes met. The man looked somehow different. His gaze was warm and kind. He took her hand in his, and Lyudmila talked about her worries. Dmitry transferred to correspondence school to help her earn money. She had to do everything she could to get her children a decent education. Once she did a stupid thing, dropping out of school. And now she could not allow her children to do the same foolish thing. That was how she was able to tell Anton the truth. The Easter holiday had come, there was a lot of work, no time to lift her head. There was no time to talk. But she noticed the way Victor looked at her. Those glances made her heart begin to beat faster. Her friend scolded her for not wanting to show herself to Victor, even though it was clear to everyone. Ludmilla was tormented by doubts about what she would tell the children. Yes, enough about the children, they have grown up. No need to give up on themselves. Vic's life didn't work out either, his wife left him. You can see how he looks at you, he's a good man. Look, they'll take you away. My friends could not calm down. The eldest son Anton called. He was on his way home and asked Dimka to meet him because he did not have the keys to the apartment. His mother replied that she would meet him herself. She was now in her car. Lyudmila understood that a complicated conversation was ahead of her. Her son got off the train. He had changed, matured, become a real good-looking man. He was in full dress uniform, with a bouquet in his hands. They got into a car, which Anton really liked. He asked about his father, on a business trip again? Ludmila thought about it and told her son everything that had happened in their family. She could see how angry Anton was, clenching his fists tightly. But she did not want her son to take steps he might regret later. The car brought Lyudmila and Anton to the entrance of their house. And then they saw Gennady. The man, dejected, was sitting on a bench. Beside him stood a suitcase with his belongings. In front of him stood a beautiful, well-dressed and expensive woman. Next to him were both of his sons. Gina asked for forgiveness. I was wrong, I'm sorry. The man said ashamedly. It was expected that the young mistress would kick him out the door as soon as the money ran out. And she was doing well, and her sons were with her. Luda said all this to her ex-husband. She has already signed the apartment over to the boys. Gina himself has nothing to do with it. Lyudmila could not forgive him for cheating on her. Gina had not expected such a turn. He sat down on the bench and thought about it. And Luda, Anton, and Dmitri went home. A couple of months later Lyudmila and Victor got married. The boys accepted the new member of their family. The couple had everything to be happy.